Welcome again, people, to Korea Deconstructed. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined through Zoom today by Zuza. Zuza is a Polish writer and academic currently based in London. Her work explores Korean independent music, film and art. Zuza has just completed a master's degree in Korean studies at the University of Edinburgh, graduating with distinction. She also received Songyungwan University's Korean Philosophy Overseas Supporters Best Essay Award, which gives you some sense of her achievements. Her dissertation for a master's received a first-class grade, and that explored fan labor, authenticity, and the hybrid economy within the Korean independent music scene. And that's what we're going to be looking at a lot today. We'll talk about Korean studies, we'll talk about Korean independent music, and I'm very happy to say to everybody listening, Zuza, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much, David. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a long time coming. I'm glad to finally speak with you like this. So let's start. Tell us about the master's degree. Congratulations. You've just finished one in Korean studies.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my master's, it was an unexpectedly good course, I would say. It was very challenging, but basically I just never expected it to be on the level it was, and to learn so much as I did, because firstly, I did psychology for my bachelor's degree, so I did not have experience in Korean studies before that. However, I did not really engage with psychology too much. I needed like a hobby on the side, something interesting, and that's how I started learning Korean. So for that, after my bachelor's, I just decided to take a break, go to Korea for 3 months, come back to the UK, focus on my writing. And when the time came to apply for my master's, I applied for 2 different types of courses. So one was in Korean studies and one was creative writing. And I got into both. But after much debate, I decided to go for Korean studies. And that's how I ended up in Edinburgh. And I feel like my cohort was overall very lucky. We had 5 people in the cohort, and everyone was from a different country. Everyone was focused on a different topic within Korean studies, but everyone was like super passionate about Korea overall and supporting each other. So it was great. Yeah.
That's fantastic. What got you into Korea?
It was the language. So I'm a bit of like a language nerd overall, and I just got interested in the alphabet. I feel like I watched just like one K-drama that my flatmate recommended to me. She was one of those people who watched K-dramas since they were like 10 years old, so she knew everything. She just recommended something random, and I got interested in the alphabet. I was like, what are these circles? What are all these circles? So I learned the alphabet, and then it just spiraled from there. And that was during my psychology degree. So I would listen to like a Korean indie playlist while studying. And that's how I got into the music, and then just went from there.
Tell me something about the language itself. So you've obviously graduated beyond just seeing circles and lines and things like this. I'm pretty sure I saw one of your, was it a topic certification?
Yes, I finally passed the topic exam, which is, but on the level 3, but I think this is a great achievement for me, because the topic exam is psychological torture, in my opinion. I tried it twice before, and I was just like, I didn't know how to deal with it, basically. So now finally I studied for like the actual how to take the exam, not just the language. Yeah, so that's very important, I think, for anyone who wants to take the topic exam. Just study for the specific exam, not just the language.
Tell me something about the language, please, Zuza. Like studying the language, I don't know, do you believe in the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? Did it change the way you think? Did you learn anything about the culture? Are there certain words that you like, or sounds, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love the sound of Korean overall. For me, it's already like my third language, basically, because I speak both Polish and English.
Yeah.
So about the perspective, I am not sure about that, because I feel like my brain is already kind of spread out everywhere with Polish and English. So obviously it definitely helps to know another language. For me, in Korean, I just find it very satisfying to learn just the grammar. You just learn new grammar endings, and like a short ending can change the whole meaning and the kind of the vibe of your sentence, basically.
Mhm.
So I love that about Korean. My favorite word is 옥수수, just like corn. I love
Yeah.
corn overall, and I think just 옥수수 is a good word. So yeah, that's my favorite word.
From 옥수수 pizza then.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
that's very
I'm all for it.
Korean. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
all
yeah.
for it. I was so happy. Yeah, the first time I went to Korea, it was they just put corn on everything.
Yeah, yeah, they do. They put
Yeah,
corn in bread, like you go to Paris or a traditional bakery, and there'll be corn in the bread somewhere
or
and corn
yeah,
on the pizza. Yeah, yeah.
on the
Go.
like fried chicken, anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I respect it. I respect it.
Yeah. I really found that I enjoyed when studying Korean. I love the sound of DW and HW. I'm thinking of words all of a sudden like 돼지 and the place in Seoul called Hwegi, because we just don't have those sounds in English at all. I don't really think it's hard to find them. And so they feel very, I don't know, it almost feels like I can speak French a little bit, but just sort of saying 돼지, Hwegi. I don't know. It's fun for me. It's fun in my mouth, I think.
Yeah, you see,
Yeah.
it's so. I feel like it depends on what your first language is then, because for me, being a Polish speaker, I'm very used to like two consonants next to each other, so I never paid attention to like twenty like, but I just yeah, I think for me more the like yo,
Yeah.
I'm more into the vowels because that sounds more kind of it's more fun for me to speak. I would say maybe
There's
that's
one
why.
particular one. But just before I ask you how Korean people react to you being Polish, there's one. The
Oh yeah.
expression is that goes together well, or that looks good on you, and it's just a whole stream of vowels, and I butcher it every time. 잘 어울려요, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
just
잘
like
어울려요.
and it's just like how do you? I just say it really fast and hope people understand me.
Oh, yo. You see, that's one of my favorites actually. Like that's why I like the vowels. I
Mm,
think just being Polish,
yeah.
it's all consonants in Polish. So Korean is all vowels for me.
Yeah, I guess shout
Yeah.
out to U Young-woo. Her name was
Yeah.
all the vowels from that. How do Korean people react to you being Polish? I mean, when you were here and you're interacting with them, if you tell them they're Polish, is there a sort of a reaction they get, or a stereotype they
Yeah.
reach towards, or?
Yeah, but it was very positive because I came to Korea for the first time in a very kind of lucky time. Lucky for Poland. It was 2022, and we started trading with South Korea a lot in terms of arms and especially the tanks. So the Polish government, this is like a story. So the Polish government bought like 1,000 tanks from South Korea, which obviously is good business for South Korea. And I don't know who was running the kind of PR campaign for it, but it was huge news in Poland and in South Korea. So when I came to South Korea for the first time, anytime I say Poland, they're like, you guys are so amazing. You just bought so many tanks from us. Also, I think the overall kind of idea was that Poland accepted a lot of refugees from Ukraine. So that was also kind of a good look for Poland. So everyone's saying like, oh, you're helping Ukraine and you are buying tanks from us, which we love. So that was literally, it was so unexpected for me because I would never think this is what they know Poland for in Korea. But I feel like at the time, it was 2022, it was just like the biggest news. So yeah, overall reaction is usually quite positive.
I love it. I would never have expected tanks, but I'm glad that it was positive. Koreans will find
Who
a
would have
positive thing
thought,
about
right?
anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. If we can, perhaps let's turn, Zuza, towards your master's degree and your dissertation, because you've just passed with that, and congratulations again. Here you're looking at the Korean independent music scene, and there's lots I want to ask you about indie and all of these things. Can you perhaps start us off, give us an introduction to your work, please?
Of course. So yes, I focus on Korean indie, and Korean indie, it's kind of difficult to define overall. That's famously difficult to define in terms of a genre. The good for me personally, I think not anything but K-pop is a good definition. Maybe outside of really like traditional music, then anything goes in K-indie. You have K-rock, K-indie rock, um, punk, pop, folk is big in Korean independent music, electronics. So basically, kind of sound wise, it could be anything. Kind of lower production quality is what usually sets it apart from just more professional music. But yeah, anything but K-pop. But for my dissertation, I focused on the other part of indie, meaning independent industry, artists being independent from labels and major funding. And I investigated just kind of the artist experiences with how do they navigate that, especially promotion, and how do they collaborate with their fans in a way that's non-capitalist. There isn't really any money being exchanged, but there is labor being exchanged from, which is usually received by the artist from the fans, which is free promotional labor. So yeah, that's kind of my focus.
I love that you're doing this because I'm sure every year now there are thousands of undergraduate, masters, and PhD dissertations written on K-pop, and all
Yeah.
for it. Yay, go! But you did yours on K-indie. Why? What was it that?
Well, I love K-indie overall. I just thought I just loved it, but I came across work by other scholars who were kind of exploring this hybrid economy idea in Korean indie, which is the hybrid economy being the kind of economy where you have both capitalist means and non-capitalist means. So there is some kind of labor being exchanged without necessarily money being exchanged. I thought this is very interesting because it's so different from K-pop. K-pop is fully just very easy kind of way of running a business where you have a lot of funding, you put that funding into the artist training, into the promotion, into the production of the music. Whereas K-indie runs completely different on completely different terms, where artists do most of the work themselves. There isn't much funding. They need to kind of come up with creative ways of supporting their music and promoting it. So I just thought it was super interesting. So, and I have background in Korean indie music because I used to write reviews for a website called Korean Indie. So I thought, I know all of those artists. I have this kind of database in my head. Why not use it to learn more about their experiences? And there isn't much research done on that either. So yeah.
I love it. Before you tell us about the hybrid economy and the capitalist and non-capitalist means, can you maybe flesh out K-indie a little bit more for us? You said it's everything not K-pop, but give us some artists, give us some sounds, give us help it come alive, please, Zuza.
So firstly, I think it is becoming way more popular right now. So it's not as niche as as it used to be. So now I feel like people, if I say name like Hugo, the Black Skirts, I think people really know what I'm talking about. Janabi. So yeah, I think the face of Korean indie is mostly K-indie rock and the kind of sad ballad type of music. Car the Garden is also becoming more and more popular these days. The original kind of music that was popular was like Chankiha in early 2000s. This back then, I feel like early 2000s, Korean indie music started as kind of like a rebellious music against the progressing capitalism and neoliberal market change in South Korea. So Chang Ki-ha, for example, he was writing about unemployment being a bomb, and people loved it. People loved it. So a lot of Korean indie music talks about the kind of more negative experiences of being young and being kind of hopeless. I think the music by Hugo also talks about that a lot. The Black Skirts, he's also more of the like sadder bit, I think, of lyrics. So yes, I think Korean independent music is what I like about it is the kind of real lyrics that reflect real issues that people face every day.
Was there an artist? I mean, for example, I love Hyoko. I love Jang Ha. I've seen him live so many times. Got a few photos with him. One day, I hope he comes on the podcast. But as if memory serves, I don't think he's used any English in any of his songs or albums. Everything, it sounds so Korean. Was there an artist? Was it Jang Ha? Was it someone else? How did you get into K-indie?
So yeah, I was listening to just random playlists, and I like the sound of indie music overall. I'm a fan of indie rock just overall. So I just like the kind of melodies and the emotional kind of weight of this music. I think the Black Skirts was actually how I got into it, which I think is a lot of people because he is one of the most popular artists. I'm trying to think. It was a kind of a boom when I started listening to it in 2021. There was this artist called Dawn. He kind of stopped releasing music now, but he was really good. I feel he was really good. So yeah, and then I started basically listening to the music and checking the lyrics, and I really liked the lyrics. So that's how I was learning Korean. That's when I started learning Korean as well. So it was all connected. I was just like listening to the music, checking the lyrics, liking them, learning some words from them. For me, the in for Korean indie was definitely the Black Skirts and Hyoko.
Love Shoko's work. Graduation comes and goes. That kind of stuff is really, really, really cool. And I was glad that they came back after sort of a 4-year hiatus or something. They disappeared for a while. What was it like writing for K Indie and doing that and getting your work? What kind of reception? Because if you write about K-pop, it's big, it's huge, and you can get immense clicks, and it's also quite dangerous in the sense that if I write about Korean politics and society and presidents, and it's fine. If I write about K-pop, my wife will walk in the room and say, be careful, because it comes with a certain trepidation about fans and communities. What's it like in sort of writing and publishing on K-Indie? What was that like, Zuza?
Oh, I loved it for one big reason, which is the community. I feel like you have no fear of what you just described with K-pop. It's the complete opposite. The artists are so happy to talk about their work and to have their work noticed. The same with their fans. It's a very supportive community, and that kind of would connect to my dissertation later on with the hybrid economy, where it's the whole industry runs on very supportive community that is trying to kind of put out good energy out there and good support. So yeah, my overall experience was super positive. The artists were so glad to be like, I would get messages from the artists as well saying, thank you so much for, it was a short review, but it does a lot, I guess, for a person to see their work being described in that way, especially in English as well, because the reviews were in English. So the goal was to reach a global audience.
Really kind of wonderful the way that happens. In terms of the fans and the community, who are they? Because I get a sense of, I know who, I'm generalizing here, but I know who football fans are. I know who opera fans are and K-pop fans are. Who are K-Indie fans beyond me and you?
I think it's usually, so the thing is, when I interviewed the artists, they said a lot of their fans are more like friends to them. So it's usually people from a similar demographic as the artist, which I think is fair enough. And I would say for maybe K-pop, it's kind of similar sometimes. But yeah, it's usually kind of younger people, I would say, who are trying to support the artist. And they maybe see themselves in the artist as well. They have like a connection to the indie artists. So yeah, it's usually younger people, mostly Korean for Korean indie. However, it's growing. It's become more international.
I've certainly noticed that just in my limited experience walking around, and obviously I'm quite older now, but if I speak to people and I ask them about Korean people, if I ask Korean people about Bombing Tiger or Sing Sing or Molar System or these kind of acts, they have no idea who they are. But if I were to ask Western people, they'll be like, yeah, totally. And so I think it's really interesting how sometimes the fan base seems to be international more than domestic. I'm not sure. It's just the way I've experienced it.
No, so I think it depends on the artist, because I do definitely agree with you about Balming Tiger and some other artists, or like Wave to Earth as well. They are so popular outside of Korea. However, a lot of small indie artists, they're only popular in Korea. So it's a wide net, I would say, and it depends, because for artists like Balming Tiger, I think they are consciously trying to appeal to more like hip hop international audiences. So it just depends on the sound as well, I think. Yeah.
I think their stuff is really interesting. Do they count as K-Indie, Bombing Tiger?
I count them. I reviewed them as K-Indie. Yeah.
Okay.
I do think so. They're doing something different. So, and they are not, I wouldn't say they're K-pop.
it's really hard, isn't it? Like it's difficult. Like it should. When I grew up, indie music was just, it was people like with jangly guitars and rock, and it's like Arctic Monkey. You know what indie sounded like, right? But when it comes to K indie, it feels like a very fluid term, and maybe is it related to the music they do, or is it related to the size of them? Because now Jangi has a huge established artist, and you think of other groups sort of like Taurim, or are they still K indie when they get big? Is Day 6 K indie if they're owned by JYP?
That's the question. That's the
What's the
big
answer,
question of
Zuza?
selling out.
Yeah.
That's what everyone asks because you want to succeed as a indie artist, but then once you succeed, are you still indie?
Mm.
It's a difficult one to respond to. I think there still needs to be what I focused on with Korean indie as well is the kind of authenticity of it, the authentic feeling of they are talking about real issues. There isn't much kind of calculated marketing behind the music. So I think it would be important to look at like the bigger artists and think, what is the cultural significance of their work right now? Are they actually trying to kind of do something with the world, like change the world in some way? Or is it actually a calculated marketing campaign by JYP or not? So maybe we should start judging KND on the cultural level now.
Mm.
Mm.
Tell me about capitalism, how this affects it then. Tell me about hybrid capitalism and how this affects authenticity and culture of the
Oh,
industry, please.
talk about capitalism. I love that.
Oh.
Just could talk about it for hours. But yeah, basically, I'm sure the listeners will know, but South Korea has become, after 1997, a very neoliberal, market-focused country. So everything is about being monetized
Mm.
in music, art, everything. So how it comes into play with music is music has become a big product, and that's how the K-pop industry was able to succeed in the way it did. It kind of perfected this formula of producing a great product and promoting it in that way. However, when you look at K-indie, K-indie doesn't really fit into that category, into that market, even because it's not pushing to sell that much. It's just people coming around raggedy clothes, just trying to kind of play some music like Chunky Ha, singing about stuff that like shouldn't be sung about, really. The reality of kind of living in South Korea. So the issue is it doesn't fit into the capitalist kind of way of running things and music industries. So that's why I thought it was interesting to look into it, because it is kind of counter-capitalist in the way of being community-based and utilizing unpaid labor.
Tell me something about anti-capitalism and the IMF bailout and the 1997 Asian financial crisis, because you're absolutely correct. South Korea became a huge neoliberal country and were expected to pay for everything and buy everything. And give us some insights onto that, or how you see the model.
Okay, yeah, it's a broad question, and I'm not an economics expert. However, it is, people are working to buy more things, basically, and then they are marketed things to them so they can buy the things, and then they want to work more so they can buy more things. And it's just like it's a cycle. It's a crazy cycle. Um, yeah, in South Korea especially, I feel like with compared just paired together with cultural pressures of good looks, good education, everything has become monetized. Just education, getting private tutoring so you can get into the best university. It's like a never-ending race, basically, under capitalism now. And I feel like people are burning out, and that's why they're kind of looking for different avenues to explore, maybe in some way. Especially, I feel like for the younger generation, it's quite difficult right now.
Do you think some of the artists in the K indie scene are those that perhaps don't fit the model of the Hagwon going, Sunung taking, high performing students? Because it's a very, for some people it fits and they go through that system. Do you find the artists in the K indie scene as being those a little bit more outside the system?
Yes, I do think so. They're usually quite rebellious in that way. Because the thing is, some people just can't get into it. Like some people literally cannot physically survive that system and just go through it. And it's really sad because some people are actually just like kind of giving up on trying to do anything. But I like seeing artists kind of try to go against it and try to, yeah, build a community that supports them, to just try to find a fight against the big capitalist machine. So the internet changed a lot, right, for arts and music, because it made it a bit more democratic, where people can produce their own music, promote it online for free. So in theory, that means that you have more freedom to become an indie artist. As before, it was, I feel like you had to perform on the street of Hongdae, and that's all the exposure you got. But now you get the online exposure, so that's really good because people can attract foreign audiences, just overall wider audiences. But this is a double-edged sword, because you are promoting online, so you are kind of consciously signing up for this capitalist race of you need to promote, you need to sell your music online. It's kind of, even though it helps to promote independent artists, at the same time it takes them away from the core of being independent and kind of forces them to sell out a little bit online. Just that's the kind of pressure that a lot of artists that I interviewed talked about.
Can you say a little bit more about that then, of going online? Because you're right, in the past, when the internet wasn't quite as developed and when things were more physical, sort of playing shows and handing out tapes and CDs, that was the way it ran. But now I guess if you're an artist, a Korean indie artist, you're going to look at trying to go not viral, but big online, because that would be the focus, I guess. So that would change, if the medium is the message, that's also going to change the way Korean indie sounds. It might become less sort of rock based or music based. People do it by themselves, individuals. How is that changing the scene, do you think? Or what have you observed about this push towards the internet, Zuza?
I think it's changing the scene a lot. I am not sure about how it changes the sound, because I feel like a lot of artists, they still want to have their own personal core sound. It's just the way that they promote is really heavily focused on online promotion and kind of trying to go viral, maybe with a different sound that, draws attention online and things like that. But it is difficult for artists to navigate a career like this, because it used to be kind of easy, like you are doing everything offline, you are just an indie artist, you don't expect to go big basically, or you go into a label, you sacrifice your kind of creative freedom, but you will become big. But now it's kind of in between, because the trade-off is not so easy anymore. You can become big as an indie artist if you put a lot of work into it online, but you are still kind of trading your creativity a little bit for that, because a lot of people, what the artists talk about is having to become basically like a business owner. You're not an artist anymore. You're doing a bit of art, but at the same time you have to think about marketing, social media, how to reach out to people, who to reach out to, like where to appear, which is crazy for one person to do all of that.
One of the things that I've observed with society more broadly and capitalism more broadly, I'm not sure if this might help you draw some inferences about the K-indie scene or your dissertation, is that I've noticed in the current, in this late stage capitalism, that we're expected to pay for services and do the service as well. So for example, now when you go into a restaurant, you pay for the food, but then the side dishes itself and you have to take your tray back when you're finished. And you go to the airport and you pay for your airplane ticket, but you also have to check your bag. And, people used to do these things for you and it was part of the service, but now we're expected to pay and we're expected to do the work. And this is my sort of old man, Alan Partridge shouts at clouds, how things are changing. But I also observed it in the music scene, especially K-pop, in that the big entertainment companies, the JYPs, the SMs and YGs, they would have to do R&R. They would have to pay lots of money to get on American television, to get on the radio, to get on these things, and they would pay to do the promotion. But now most of the promotion comes from the fans and the fan labor, because these people will watch the video so many times that it gets 50 million views and then it gets in the news and it will be retweeted and streamed. So there's been a fabulous way where the entertainment companies have made the fans do the promotional labor for them while still getting all the money themselves. And it's a wonderful, capitalists will be clapping their hands at that. How did they do that? But I'm wondering how that affects the Korean indie scene, this promotion and late stage capitalism and management.
Yeah, you're completely right about that. Like, that's kind of the focus of my dissertation, is the free labor from fans. It's just what I think the difference between K-pop and K-indie is. I think it's in K-indie, it's a more equal exchange because the artists are also putting a lot of work into trying to communicate with fans. This is a very like personal connection. So what I explored as well is, and other researchers explored in terms of the free labor from fans, is that they get paid in a personal kind of connection, that this is like a non-monetized labor, but there is a reward to it. That's like real connection with the artist and feeling like you are building a community, which is an important human need that I feel like capitalism doesn't really talk about. It doesn't really take it into consideration. Just the kind of traditional capitalist view of the economy is just like, you pay, you get something, you sell, that kind of an exchange. But with K-indie, the both the artists and the fans have the opportunity to get this kind of different reward, which is a personal reward. But your point is very good because both K-pop and K-indie are the same in terms of utilizing the free labor from fans. I just think the setup of it is completely different.
That's something, because sometimes artists are introverts and they're not very, everyone's different. So it's sabasa. But I mean, if you are a K-indie artist, then maybe you want to be this kind of recluse and you don't want to reveal too much about yourself. But then as a K-indie artist, you have to have connection and community. That's the difference that you have, I guess.
Yeah. So the reward is usually, I'm talking about the fans. That's what the fans are. Because the question is, why do people do it for free? Why do people do all this promotional work and like go to concerts and record artists? There's a lot of people who do like free artwork for artists for promotion. Why do they do it? The thing is, they get a lot of satisfaction from it, and they feel like they're a needed part of a community and they feel seen. For the artists, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The reward is obviously getting promoted, but they do talk a lot about the indie artists I've interviewed. They do talk a lot about just being seen as well as an artist. Like, there is a lot of satisfaction in that and being appreciated for someone who is like engaged with your music in depth. It's not just, oh, you're good looking and your music is kind of fun and I'm gonna be obsessed with you. It's actual kind of more authentic, real connection, which is what people, I guess that's why people go into indie music as well. They're kind of searching for a deeper meaning to their work.
And I'm sure, as someone who writes Zuza, you know that if somebody actually reads your work and comments on it or says something about it, you feel a sense of satisfaction. You feel like, well, thank you. You're not, you've taken the time out of your day to engage in something I've produced, and I appreciate it. So for the artist, that must be very rewarding. And it seems to, and then of course there's just the music about it. Sometimes we just like the music and the sound, and we think, yeah, that's cool. That's my vibe, man. It's growing though. We shared an article with each other just about how much K-indie is growing. Is this just part of the whole Hallyu boom? What was your take when you saw these things about K-indie is growing up, blowing up on Spotify and those kind of things?
Firstly, we cannot ignore the fact that K-pop is what kind of broke that glass ceiling and pushed Korean culture into the international audiences. So yes, obviously it is part of like Hallyu got so big that people do want to kind of, people are so aware of Korean culture. Now they can afford to dive deeper. They're like, oh, I know all the K-pop, I know all the kind of mainstream stuff. Maybe I want to kind of explore more. So I think this is a part of it. But what I also think is K-indie right now, with its more kind of sad, real feeling, is just reflecting the kind of mindset of the younger generation globally right now, I think, considering the economic situation, just overall, it's not, I feel like the overall mood internationally is not the happiest right now and not the most hopeful. I don't know if I don't know if you agree, but that's just how I see the world. And that reminds me of how Chang Ki-ha, when he started his career, what was the appeal? The appeal was of his music was that he was talking about kind of negative things that people were experiencing at the end of at the beginning of the 2000s, after the financial crisis of 1997. So I'm just thinking maybe this is the same kind of appeal right now. And the third thing, it just sounds good. It's good indie music. And also why I study Korean indie is because it is just great music, and it is an industry that's booming, and it's promoting new artists every year. So if you're an indie fan, you will go into K indie just because of how good the industry is.
Some wonderful points there that I'll try to dig into, because, not everybody likes K-pop, but if you've heard about Korea and, everything that comes with it, because I think people sometimes fail to realize that 15 years ago, if you said Korea to people, they would generally think of North Korea and communism and nuclear weapons and men in funny Maoist suits. But now when we think of Korea, we not only think of South Korea, but we think of luxury and we think of K-pop, and it comes. And for those that want a different K-indie will be there, right? So that's great for them. Does K-indie sound different from British indie, from Polish indie, from Japanese indie? Is there something in there, or is it just the language is different? That's a very difficult question, I think, Zuza, but is there anything like sonically in K-indie that's different?
I think there is some kind of emotional depth to it that's quite unique. I think maybe it has something to do with the Han emotion, the kind of inherent sadness of South Korean nation that's just obviously only a part of their identity, but it is kind of a big thing. I do think there is a specific K-indie sound which I cannot really describe because I'm not like a music expert in terms of actual melodies and things, but there is kind of raw emotion to it, which I think also might come from the karaoke culture in Korea, where music is overall used to release a lot of negative emotions. And, Koreans love their sad ballads. So I feel like maybe they perfected the formula for an emotional song. And that kind of goes into the K indie music. That's just my take. There is also K indie music that's not really sad.
Yeah. There's lots of different types of it. I've always thought, and this is just probably because I'm British myself, that there's a heavy sort of British 90s Brit rock, Blur, Pulp, Oasis. I hear a lot of that in K indie, and probably because that's my reference and that's what I grew up with myself. But I hear that a lot in the K indie sound, sometimes in certain acts, certainly in the guitar acts, in the bands that do these things. Can you say something, Zuza, about the future, the world? You sort of lamented the world's not in a good place, and that's why we don't that's why people like K-indie. The first line of Mark Fisher's book, Capitalist Realism, is it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. I think maybe you'll recognize that one.
Yes. Well, but people are saying now it is late stage capitalism. We're entering kind of technocracy era, which is crazy, which we are kind of selling our lives to algorithms, basically. And that is becoming a bigger and bigger part of this world. And what you mentioned about capitalism being now you have to pay for stuff to do it yourself, I think a big part of it is kind of moving the whole, basically we are moving our lives onto the online space more and more. So maybe that's also why, and then that's why people crave community in real life. It all connects kind of. Uh, in my research, what I found people were lamenting the most, the artists, is that need to survive as an indie artist, you have to promote online. But they became indie artists to connect with people in real life. So they're kind of losing the reason why they became indie artists, just to sustain being an indie artist online. So that's my kind of, just overall, I feel like it's the outlook is a bit bleak. I don't want to sound so negative overall. Like I am overall like a positive person, but I'm just talking about the kind of mood and what I see, what I hear people talk about, especially my age, it is just, the future seems a bit uncertain with the technology becoming such a big part of our lives, bigger and bigger part of our lives.
Techno-feudalism is one of the concepts that I've been looking at recently that I find interesting. Did you come across any artists or any conversations where people decided not to engage with the platforms? Because if you're a big artist, it's easy to say, well, I'm going to pull my music off Spotify, because you're already, no, and fair play, people do have different ideological positions on these, but it's easy to do once you're an established artist and you've got a fan base and you've got money and things like this. It's a lot harder to say, I'm going to refuse to do Spotify or these platforms for ideological reasons, because otherwise then you won't get heard. How did those conversations, did you find any people that didn't?
No. You're making a great point. But people were talking about how if you're established, you don't have to do all the things that they are doing, which is kind of putting the work in on social media and online. But all the artists were heavily invested in promoting online, because that was their only choice. They're like, if they want to blow up, that's the only way they can do it, is engaging with Spotify. You see, they kind of don't have a choice but to monetize their music in that way online, basically. There doesn't seem to be another path. That's also what was coming up in my interviews. People think that there is just like one narrow path to become an indie musician, and that means just sacrificing your time and energy to be online, basically.
What does it involve doing? Just in the like the day-to-day logistics of that, what does that involve for a K-indie artist? I mean, because everyone uploads Instagram stories a few times a week or something like that, but I guess it's more involved than that.
Yeah, they do. Firstly, they do a lot of playlist pitching, which is pitching their songs to people to include in their playlist, which I had no idea about before. So I guess that also includes a lot of research, just kind of trying to find the people. And, you are constantly sending kind of cold messages saying, hi, I'm a new artist. Can you put me on your playlist? That includes, like, there's a lot of YouTube playlists with music, with indie music. So I think people just are trying to get onto that. So that's a lot of labor. Outside of that, just taking a lot of photos of your daily life, basically, and posting them on Instagram stories, doing Instagram posts. The more kind of involved people are trying TikTok and Reels, which also is a whole other production you have to put into it. And yeah, I think these are the main kind of avenues that people utilize for social media. Also vlogging as well. Yeah, so just vlogging, but that's also so time consuming. I'm like, how are you making music and vlogging your daily life? Because the content that has the most appeal is the personal content, because people want to have a personal connection with someone even online.
Get ready with me K-indie playlist or something. That's yeah. And I guess it also, Zuza, it brings in back the issue of appearance, because we expect established pop stars to be beautiful and hyper perfect in their appearances and things like this. But that was always the attraction of indie, that it was about the music. It wasn't about the appearance. It wasn't, it was about the authenticity. It was about the performance, and it was about the underdog narrative almost. And now I guess if people are having to vlogs and put themselves out, it comes back to appearance, and they'll be competing online with beautiful people, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's not even the being beautiful, it's being cool. You have to be really cool. It's a very specific kind of look that indie artists have these days. I don't know if you go to like Yeonnam-dong, everyone has those like tattoos, just like the pencil tattoos, the same kind of like white tank top. It's like a very specific look that people are craving, or like a bob haircut. So yeah, I think it is important. It's very important. And I think indie artists they find it very important to look different from K-pop stars. So it is a pressure to look in a certain way.
We spoke a little bit about groups like Day6, and I'm wondering now, because K-indie is getting kind of popular and hot, and people, they want something more than K-pop because that carries with it, all the associations with beauty and love and all of the good stuff. But sometimes people want something authentic. They want something curated. They want their own sort of Pinterest vibe. And so if you have a K-indie group that you like, that might seem cooler. It might give you more cred than liking a K-pop group, right? And so do you think entertainment companies now are sort of trying to immerse themselves into the K-indie scene? So it starts as this underground thing, and slowly, just like what happened with hip hop and punk music and, dance music, the big companies slowly incorporate it in this kind of Gramscian hegemonic way and bring it into themselves.
Absolutely. That brings us back to capitalism, where everything is monetized. So even the kind of anti-capitalist movement can be monetized if you really do it well. So yeah, I do think major companies are embracing K-indie because it is a market, and it's a kind of untapped market. And there is a big group of consumers that do want to be cool. They don't want to engage with K-pop because, K-pop is kind of a divisive topic overall. And foreign audiences, some people are really against it and some people hate it and they think it's super fake. And then the big companies can be like, well, we have this very real thing for you here that we've curated just for you. And this is K-indie. So yeah, I do think it is being embraced. It's fine. Like there is a positive side to it. Like people, it does allow indie artists or people from outside of the mainstream to gain recognition. And obviously that is great.
Sometimes, I'll go online and I'll follow different record labels rather than artists. What's the one that I look at quite a lot? Polokananos. I might have said their name right. They do, and I'll look at when they upload stuff and they upload artists, and I love, sometimes I'll find this album or this EP of 20 minutes that I really like, and it's got like 800 views, and I feel like more special for liking that than liking Blackpink's latest 150 a billion view thing. Do you know what I mean? It feels more like I've found something. It's like going through, you won't understand this, like Our Price or the record shop and finding this CD or record at the back, and it feels only I know about this.
It does go back to this kind of community. You feel like you're part of the smaller community of 800 people that saw that video, and you do feel more connected to the artist. That is the appeal of Korean indie. So for some certain people, it just works better than being one of millions of fans of Blackpink. Yeah, I think Magic Strawberry Sound is also a good label. They have a lot of, and yeah, I think there's like a mirror ball.
Did your research, Zuza, come up with any solutions?
And maybe pointed at some solutions. So definitely public funding of the arts would be very helpful. There is some funding actually for independent artists in South Korea, so it's not so bad. But just kind of putting more efforts, like focused effort, into creating offline spaces for people to enjoy the music in, and for artists, to make it easier for the artists to kind of gain access to such spaces. Because a lot of artists talked about how when you get established, it's so easy to find venues and perform. But before that, it's almost impossible. That's why everything is online, basically. So it would be nice to have some kind of more public spaces, because obviously even Hongdae Main Street, which used to be famous for as a place to discover indie artists and busking, now it's completely K-pop focused, and it's all just kind of, yeah, it's targeted at big appeal on TikTok to international audiences and not really indie busking. So yeah, just kind of creating more spaces. I think that would be a good solution for that. Not the solution, but it would help a lot to kind of take a lot of pressure off of the artists.
I completely agree. I think that's how a lot of music began in the 1970s and 80s in the United Kingdom, that there was government funding, there was sort of art degrees and community places where people could go and make music, and that's what they did. I mean, it's outrageous to me how Korea, because I mean, I played in the indie scene for a long time, and you would play in Hongdae Park and there'd just be thousands of people standing around looking, and it was wonderful. And now when I see the price of gigs and concerts, like for indie gigs and concerts. I'm like, well, you have to be a really dedicated fan, like to pay $50 or $40 to go and see a show. And I'm like, it never used to cost that. And this must make it harder for the artists, I think. It's not just the public spaces. It's also that you need to afford coffee and rent and food and these kind of things. I think it's harder and harder to be somebody that just withdraws from the money-making system and just focuses on art.
Just think about all the labor we've described today of being an artist, just like not only making music, but promoting it, kind of uploading things, creating content. But think of having a job as well at the same time to support yourself. How is that possible for a person? I don't. That's why a lot of people kind of drop out of indie music after, let's say, their 20s, because it becomes impossible. Like, they need to, if you want to start a family, if you want to like buy a house or whatever, it's just impossible to kind of sustain a career like this.
Sorry, buy a house?
Buy a
In the
house, I know,
21st century?
I know. Ambitious.
Can you say something about that age thing? Because, this happened to me. People come up to me and say, David, you still playing concerts? I'm like, no, I got old. I can't do that anymore. I've kids to feed and things like this. But I guess that will affect also the K-indie artists. How does age work into all that, Zuza?
Age is a big thing. A lot of artists do talk about it. Most of the artists I've interviewed are like early 20s, but there were some also older artists who were just saying they're basically kind of stepping out of the career because it's impossible to sustain at this point, and it's impossible. And yeah, a lot of younger people were talking about how they can see their older colleagues step out. And they do have this understanding that this is not sustainable, really.
And then also, I guess, I'm sure everyone will know this listening, but military service would come into this. I mean, you hear there's so many with the Korean punk bands and rock bands that, they're just getting some traction. They're playing shows, they're doing well. And then it's, a guitarist has got to go and do 2 years military service.
They're out for a bit. Yeah, exactly. The age is it is an important factor in becoming a K&D star.
Yeah. And sort of, we've spoken about the very negative things. Perhaps help people think positively of it. Where should they go? What should they look at? What artists should they check out if we try to, promote and fanboy or fangirl K-indie for a while? What should people do? I shared the album that I've been listening to with you earlier this week. Molar System Malfunction. It's this 19-minute sort of really laid back album that I don't know. It sounds a little bit like The Cure or Killing Joke or Nirvana. But it sounds like an alternate universe of there was this band that existed in the 90s that I missed out on. That's how I like listening to this K-indie. And it's the same with the pop music. Like when I listen to, I don't know, Deli Spice or something like this, it sounds like Oasis's unreleased album. That's what I love. It's this alternate universe, but that's what I think K-indie does so well, because I'm so familiar with the melodies, the sounds, the chord progressions and all of that. And then all of a sudden there's this whole like hidden extra levels and designs that I'd not come across before. So for me, that's the appeal of K-indie, that I'm finding new ways to appreciate music that I thought I was already familiar with.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the appeal of K-indie as well, because the artists kind of look for inspiration outside of Korea, and that's how they get this like kind of older sound that maybe in the UK is already long gone, but they find it and they kind of revive it with a new look. But yeah, so for the positive things, there are still really good spaces. I would say go outside of Hongdae for actual indie music. It's all Sangsu-dong, Yeonnam, and Mangwon is becoming really big. So all the kind of neighboring places around Hongdae. In Sangsu, the Jebidabang Cafe. Do you know it? Have you heard about it?
This is the one where you look down on the...
Yes.
Yeah. I saw
so
Gina
good.
King perform there. She's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a cafe with free concerts of live music on a tiny stage, but the concerts are amazing. They have really good artists there. This summer I saw a band, I would say, called Moon and the Bouncers. And it's literally just one woman on a bass with two people on drums. And she's so good. They were amazing. And it's actually not very much lyrics, but just the music. It's amazing. I loved it. So yeah, there is that. I also this year I've been listening to Hanbi. She's kind of like a more like bedroom pop kind of lo-fi vibe, which also she does bring this. There is this thing about her music that, and also most of her lyrics are in English. If anyone wants to listen to kind of English lyrics, there is this thing about her sound that like it sounds familiar. You're like, oh, I've. This is like as if you know this artist already, which is great, but you don't know her. She's a new thing. She's great. I think there is this band called, I don't know. I would say I would pronounce it trap, but it's like TRPP, I think. It's
Okay.
just, yeah, just consonants. And they, as you talk about other bands reminding you of like Oasis, they remind me of like early The Strokes, you know, which is great. That's what you
Yeah.
want in indie
Yeah.
music. Yeah. So yeah, these are my recommendations. There is still the music is still alive, and as much as we complain about the indie industry, the reason why it's so difficult and competitive for artists in South Korea is because it is a big booming industry now, and it is on the so that means that you get a lot of good music coming out of it as well. But that means there is a lot of competition for it as well. So yeah, definitely check out. I think around Sangsu, there's always places with live music, and Mangwon is becoming the place to be for if you just go into a cafe or a bar that says live music, you will find something, which is the amazing part of K indie. You can just find artists like that. Yeah.
How do people react to you in the live concert space, Zuza? Because if you forgive me for saying, you're quite striking. In your appearance, you don't look like the average Korean lad with a bowl cut. So how do people react to you in the live concert spaces?
It's in Korea, I feel like it's quite like a respectful space overall. So
Mm.
people might look at you, but they won't be kind of bothering you too much. Overall, I do get quite positive reactions of being like a foreigner who knows those local spaces and has done her research and is kind of trying to be more invested in the culture on a different level. So yes, but it is true, like in a lot of the kind of indie spaces, I am usually the only foreigner in there, which is quite, yeah, it's a funny experience. I wouldn't say in any way it's negative. I think it's a positive experience if you are okay with being stared at, because I'm also quite tall. I'm like very Polish looking, just like blonde and tall. So it is, I do usually stand out. Yeah. Um, it's an interesting experience, definitely.
I think everyone in Korea gets the side. Everyone gets looked at. Everyone feels that if you're tall, just it gets heightened a little bit.
Oh God,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I will give a shout out. I think there's a magazine online and sometimes offline, Debaser, run by Jamie Finn. He's a Scouse lad here. He's in Korea. He does a lot for Korean indie, and a lot of the music I listen to sometimes comes from him writing about indie bands and indie groups and things like that. So, highly recommend Debaser as a way in to find out groups and to find out people performing and read interviews with them. It's a really nice way. Perhaps as we draw this towards a close, Zuza, do you have any final recommendations? Any things that we should be looking at? I know you gave us Trap and Moon and the. I wrote down Moon and the
The
Banana.
bouncers, yeah, Moon
The
and the
Bouncers.
bouncers. I think this is so she's Moon is the
Yeah.
main guitarist, I think, and then the bouncers are the two people on the drums. Great. Yeah. Hanbi, I like Hanroro, I think her name is Hanroro. But she's quite popular now because she had one song, like, you've also shared with me, I think, like the article you shared with me about K indie becoming bigger. She was on that list of like Spotify top artists, and she's kind of new. I love her. She has very emotional rock ballads, which is something I love. Yeah.
Love it. Beyond K indie, um, any books, any movies,
Mm.
Any things to recommend for the people listening, Zuza? What should they listen to? What should they read? What should they watch?
So for watching, there was a Korean film festival in London last month, and I went with my friend to see a film,
Hmm?
but it's a film about baseball in South Korea during the Japanese occupation, and it's great. YMC baseball team. Wow, what a great title. It was from the year 2000. It is amazing.
It's
It is
from
a
the year 2000. Sorry, it's an old
yes,
movie.
it's an
Wow.
old movie, but it
Yeah.
is so good. And Song Kang-ho is in it. It's one of his first roles, or like first like bigger leading. It's so. And then in the festival, the person introducing the film said this is like the first time it's being shown in the UK. So if you have a chance to check it out, definitely do. Yeah, I loved it. It's a fun film, and yeah, with historical background. For music, I'm a big Kitty Boy fan. His album, Nine Cuts, it's just nine number and then CUT. It's an older album and it's so good. I feel like it's so underrated. It's based on like the idea of a film. So each song is like telling a story slowly, and there's like an interlude of just like piano music in between. I think it's a great album. It's a great like background listen. So I would recommend it. Yeah.
I love it. I'll try both of those. And,
Yeah.
I love Korean movies, and I'm ashamed but pleased to know that I've never seen or even heard of that one. Um,
It's
YMC
so good.
Baseball. Yeah.
It's so good though. It's fun. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. Zuza, thank you today for speaking with me and telling all the people listening about capitalism and K-Indie and Sangso, and giving them an idea of your work and what it means. I feel the love. I've got some artists that I want to go and check out and Google and see if they're on YouTube and Spotify and all the platforms doing those things we spoke about. It was wonderful speaking with you, Zuza. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity and always happy to talk about K&D
K-Indie and capitalism.
and capitalism. Always capitalism.
Yes, yes. Zuza,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.